In this video, I unbox the Swann 4K series smart security system. We'll get to see the difference the resolution really makes when it comes to video evidence. I'll also show you how you can talk to your DVR via the Google Assistant. Hey Google, ask Swann Security to cast channel 6.
Okay, starting the stream.
I also do a fresh install so you have an idea of what to expect if you buy this system. So even before we begin, I wanted to show you the actual difference between a 1080p camera, a 5 megapixel camera, and a 4K camera. So what I've done here is I have taken pictures of a registration plate at certain distances, and then I've shown you the actual quality of the image. So what you can see is that by the time you go past 18 meters, the 1080p camera is no longer visible, the registration plate. And as you head towards the 22 meter mark, the 5 megapixel camera and the 4K camera continue to hold up. So what you'll see is that as you go towards 24 meters to the 26 meter mark, the 5 megapixel camera is a little bit less clear hitting the 24 meter mark, and likewise for the 4K camera. Going towards 30 meters and 34 meters, which are the last two, you'll actually find that the registration plates are no longer visible, but you can still see some fine details in the image. So here is the three cameras footage side by side. Maybe you can tell which footage belongs to which camera. And now here you're going to see vehicles going from left to right and right to left. So this can give you an idea of the sort of fluidity of motion you'll get from the camera. Hey Google, ask Swann Security to cast channel 6.
Okay, starting the stream.
Swann Security also now fully integrates with Google Assistant. So what this basically means is that you can now view your camera footage and live footage directly on TV using Google Assistant and Chromecast. So to do this, all you have to do is follow the on-screen procedure, and what that will do is that will actually lead you to the Google app. In the Google app, what you'll do is you will search for Swann Security once you have signed in. Then you will link to the Swann Security, and then you will log into Google. Once you have logged in, you can now go back to the main page where it will say accounts linked once the linking process is done. Finally, you'll go back to the Home Safe View app and you will follow the on-screen procedure where it will ask you to actually log into your Google account. Once you are done, the registration will be successful and you can ask your Google device to ask Swann Security to cast live camera footage directly to your TV. Hey Google, ask Swann Security to cast channel 7.
Okay, starting the stream.
Hey Google, ask Swann Security to cast channel 4.
Okay, starting the stream.
Hey Google, ask Swann Security to stop broadcasting channel 4. As a side note, you can create shorter commands and this will help you to communicate better with your Google device. You could say something like, hey Google, show me the front door. But you will need to do this inside of Google system. Another key feature is the push notifications in the app, which allows you to get notified whenever there's a PIR detection. What this means is that whenever there's a thermal detection from any of the cameras, it will notify you, and that's really useful because it allows you to have very few false detections as when using motion detection. Another really great feature that Swann has introduced is the fact that you can now upload still images to your Dropbox account. This is really easy to set up, and I would highly recommend doing it.
So I just wanted to show you what you actually get inside the box. Down here you have your BNC cables. These are the 4K ones. You've got an HDMI cable over here. This is, I think, a 3-foot cable if I remember correctly. You've got your network cable, and you've got your power with the 4 splitters for the cameras to connect for the power of the cameras. You've got, obviously this is one of the cameras here, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about that. But also you've got, each of them have in their own little package of mounting screws and the Allen key required to make the adjustments. You also have a mouse here which is going to connect into your main unit. The 2 power adapters, one will be for the unit and one will be for the cameras. These are the other 3 cameras, and then finally we have the actual unit over here, which I'll talk to you more about now. So looking at the front of the unit, what you're going to notice probably first is the USB ports on the right hand side.
And you can use these ports to connect a mouse or USB to extract footage.
Looking at the back of the unit, the first thing you will see on the left side is the places for installing your cameras. These are where your BNC cables are going to be connecting. You've got 8 camera channels over there, of which I will be personally using 4 channels. The cool thing about these is that you can actually run any camera from the Swann series on those cameras, on those channels. Particularly the ones that I would be talking about are the 1080p ones and the 5 megapixel. So what I'm going to be doing when I do the resolution comparison, I'm going to be connecting the 4K camera, a 5 megapixel camera, and a 1080p camera, and then we'll see the difference in the resolution quality so that you have an idea of what you can expect if you were to, say, use the 4K cameras.
The next thing you're going to see are these 4 audio inputs, and they're used for connecting RCA microphones, but you will have to run them separately. You can add up to 4 channels, channels 1, 2, 3, and 4, so that the recorded footage and live view will have audio on those channels. If you need a microphone, you can easily do that by searching CCTV microphone or RCA microphone on Amazon. The other thing is you can actually listen to audio directly on the Home Safe View app. On the live view. You can also use the audio output here to output directly into a speaker.
Lastly, or not lastly, but you have the VGA and the HDMI for your output for the visual device, mainly a screen, or it could be a TV, basically the place where you're going to be able to see the live view. And if you are recording footage, it can also be the place where you're going to see your recorded footage. Looking at the LAN port, that's basically your network connection. That's going to connect directly into your modem or router. You've got a PTC port up here.
You also have a USB port which can be used for a mouse or for a USB stick.
And you've got the 12 volt power source, which is also supplied in the unit. If you look underneath, the other thing you might want to know about this thing is, and hopefully I'll get it here, is that you can see that it's got these. So yeah, you can use that to mount it on the side of a wall, or if you want, you can even mount this unit upside down. Wherever you're going to put it, you want to make sure that it's well ventilated and that it's not going to be people are not going to put heavy objects on it, which can affect the device.
It's also recommended that you store the DVR in a safe place in case a professional burglar targets your DVR to take it away. So it's recommended to leave your DVR in a secret location.
Okay, so looking at the camera, the first thing on the right side you will see is it's very neatly labeled Swann 4K Ultra HD. So you absolutely know that this is a 4K camera. Looking at the front, it's got a very discreet profile. When you mount it, because it's completely black from the front, it makes it quite easy for you to make it a discrete installation. You've got the PIR sensor in the front just over here at the bottom, and what that is doing is that does heat detection for you. So this camera does two modes. You've got the thermal motion detection, and you have got standard pixel motion, so it can do both depending on what you set the unit to do. Generally speaking, Swann likes it when you use thermal detection because the cameras just work a whole lot better. They do less recording, which is fake recording in the sense of it trees swaying or things moving which are not necessarily of interest to you, whereas the thermal motion allows the unit just to pick up on, say, people moving or objects that have heat on them. Looking at the setup right now, this camera that I have in front of me is a complete metal body construction, so it is very, very solid. You're not going to have any issues with this camera for a long period of time. Looking at the back of the camera, you can see that there is a little notch cut out in the unit so that you can actually put the camera and install it down like that. So if you imagine your connection point, if your connection point is different from the place where you're going to be putting the camera, then you can see that will not be a problem. Alternatively, if by chance you were, say, to mount it so that the wires are going directly into the wall, that's also not a problem as well. I think in the past, in my other videos, if you've watched them, you'll see that I actually install these using a junction box, and so my installations are usually like that. But I might be trying something new this time. I haven't decided yet, where I might actually mount directly onto the junction box, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Now, looking at this camera, one of the things that might interest you, and this is one of the packages that you actually get with the unit. I'm just going to open it up so you can have an idea of how you can actually adjust it. So if you look on the sides, you can see that it's got these this Allen key is made for these bolts over here. Basically, you just unscrew it, and they're quite tight usually to start off with. So it's probably good to use the long side as leverage. There we go. You can see it's quite durable. So setting up the camera can actually be a bit difficult if you're using the Allen key and trying to set it up high. Maybe it's not as easy as setting up with a screwdriver, but having said that, because you're only going to be setting it up once, I don't really think that will be much of a inconvenience. So I'm just unscrewing the two screws over here, this one here, and there's one on the other side. Hopefully that's in focus. And what that does is it allows the camera to rotate. So you have rotation all the way around. You have a point over here which allows the camera to pivot up and down. And then you have a point down here, and if I remember correctly, that allows the unit to spin away from the base. So if you do that, you can actually move this whole point at the bottom down there, which is particularly useful. It just gives you all ways or all angles. It gives you all availability of angles, so you can really set up the camera exactly how you need to set it up. This camera is IP55 or 56. I'll write it down in the details on the video, which basically means that it's waterproof. As long as you're not firing pressured water at it, this thing is going to last a long time. It's designed to withstand the rain. And as a little bit of advice, I always recommend that you try and install it in a place where the camera is not going to be hit by direct sunlight. That generally allows the camera to last longer. One of the interesting things that I have been noticing about these cameras is that they do draw, and I think it would be the same with most cameras, but they do draw a lot of spiders. A lot of insects want to build stuff on them. So you're going to have to clean your lenses fairly regularly, and by regularly I would say maybe once every 3 months, and or maybe you won't have to clean it for even up to a year or so. It really depends on how many insects are around the unit. And generally that's very easy to tell when the unit gets blurry, when the footage gets blurry. It's probably a sign that the camera has got spider webs on top of it, or something that's actually blocking the vision. Another thing is sometimes on the PIR sensor, dirt can be left on that, and that can actually affect the ability of the camera to detect properly thermal motion. So you want to make sure that you spend at least maybe once a year or so, I guess, do a little bit of maintenance on the camera so that they work as they should do. Yeah, so that's the camera, and that's basically how it tilts, and I guess the main things. Another thing that you might want to know about is the night footage and the day footage. The viewing angle is 90 degrees, and the night vision distance is up to 150 feet, which is 45 meters in total darkness, but up to 60 meters in ambient light, which is I think it's quite a bit more than what's available for the 5 megapixel camera and what is available for the 2 megapixel camera, the 1080p one. But it also mentions here that the PIR sensor range is up to 32 feet, 10 meters. So although it can view up to 45 meters, it can only detect up to 10 meters. Okay, so I have shown you that camera over there, the 4K Ultra HD camera. I've shown you the main unit, and now I'm going to just show you some of the peripherals and things that you can expect from the camera. So, with the box at least, I should say. You've got the Cat5e cable that is provided with the box, and that's going to connect directly from your unit into your router. You've been also provided with a HDMI cable. The HDMI cable is fairly long. I think it's about a meter. I think it's a 3-foot cable. Okay, this is the power adapter. This is the unit that is going to be connecting you're going to use to connect to your unit DVR, and it's also going to be what you're going to be using to connect all your 4 cameras. You connect to all 4 cameras using the splitter which is provided. So just to show you here, you're going to take this side, you're going to plug it in over here like so, and then these 4 connections will be for the respective cameras that you are going to be installing. So you will need one power adapter for every 4 cameras you installed, which means that for a system of 8 channels, you will need a total of 3 power adapters. There's 2 provided in mine because I only have 4 cameras and there is only 1 DVR unit. All right, now that that's over, let's look at what else is here. We've got the mouse. This mouse is just your standard optical mouse. And it's pretty useful. You're going to be using it for your initial setup at least, because you probably don't want to take your mouse from your computer to try and set this thing up and then put it back. It's just inconvenient. And so this mouse can be left always on the unit, and if you have a screen directly connected to the DVR, then that's great as well, because you can do all your adjustments, or you can adjust all your camera settings directly from the unit. It comes with a quick start guide, which read me first here, and then the second thing it tells you is there's a read me second one over there as well. So that's supposed to guide you through pretty much everything that you would be guided through to install this unit. What else we got here? This is to install Home Safe View. If you plan to view your camera using the app, then you'll need this to help you out when you do the installation. This will allow you to set up the app quite easily. So also we have these theft deterrent stickers, and these are, again, they're deterrent stickers. They're not going to necessarily stop someone from breaking into your home or breaking into your business or so, but they will deter people because they'll be aware that cameras are being run on the site. So then also you've got here a extended warranty golden ticket. Seems to say that you get 18 months free warranty if you register online. And I guess this protects your unit if there's any sort of manufacturing defects or something. Then they will cover you. They will allow you to do the replacement if required. All right, the last thing that you will need is this. Oh, well, the second to last thing, I should say, is a mounting sticker. This will allow you to correctly drill the holes for where you're going to be placing the camera. They should directly line up. Hopefully, if you can see that, you can see they're going to be lining up with all the mounting holes of the camera. So this is just an easy way if you wanted to say install the camera on a wall and it's your first time installing it, or you're not used to installing these units. This really helps you to do that installation without having too much issue. The last thing, which is probably very important to note, is the BNC cable. Now this is a 18-meter cable, 60 foot. The thing about this camera cable, is that this is a cable that is made to deliver 4K from the camera to the unit. Now, some BNC cables are only designed to deliver up to 1080p. And that is very important. If you have an existing Swann unit or you have an existing system and the cables that were installed were 1080p, you will not get the 4K quality from that cable. You will have to run these cables to get the 4K quality. If you were using these to, say, run lower quality, no problem. You can use these cables to run 1080p. You can use these cables to run the 5 megapixel cameras, and that will be absolutely fine. But as soon as you try and use these to run the if you try and use another cable to run the 4K cameras, you're going to have resolution issues. You're not going to get the quality that you desire.
Okay, looking at connecting the cables to the DVR, the first thing I'm going to be doing is installing the power supply cable, which is on the right. Followed by that, I'm going to put the mouse cable into the USB slot, which can also be installed in the front. The next thing is the network cable, and followed by that is the HDMI cable, which you can now see. After doing that, the next thing I do is install all the BNC cables, and that's done on the left side, as can be seen. And then the red cables that you can see will be connected to the power supply. So that's done there. Now that's running to this power supply here. And once you've done that, now you can flick the switch on, and this is what you will see on the screen. The next thing we have to do is the setup, so I will run you through that now. Okay, now that we are in the main screen of the setup wizard, what I'll do is I'll just show you quickly what you can expect in the setup. So you go through the first page and it will go through some information regarding how to follow the wizard. Okay, once you have done that, you'll go to the page where you'll be asked to set up a password. To my knowledge, you don't actually have to set up a password if you don't want to. But if you do, this will be the password that you will use to access the DVR and make changes on it as well. Okay, and then once you've done that, then you will see the general system configuration settings. Here you can set up the language, the video format, the resolution, time zone, time format, date format, service name, and the P2P ID. Basically, it's just general settings, and most of it you can even leave the same and change later on if you need to. Once you have done that, you will be able to set up an email. What this email will be used for is motion that has been detected from the cameras. It will just send you an email saying that motion has been detected at this time, etc. I personally did have a little bit of trouble trying to set this up, so I actually just went through it and never set it up and ended up setting it up later. The main issue that I had is that when you try and test the email, it will say failed because Gmail doesn't recognize this DVR as being a secure connection. So you will have to go into the Gmail settings and do some adjustment there so that it works. I suspect that this is only with Gmail. I don't think it's with the other emails though. On the last two pages, the first one will be your NTP configuration. You usually don't have to do anything there, but in the DST configuration, which is your daylight savings time, you might want to enable that so that you don't have to change the times during different times of the year. Once you've set up the DST configuration, the unit will restart and the cameras should automatically load up. Okay, so once that setup is done, this is basically the screen that you're going to see. In your case, if you've got a 4-channel camera and you've got 4 cameras, you'll see 4 of these light up. If you've got 8, then you will see all of those boxes full with video. It's probably a good idea that if you have set your cameras around the house, that you kind of set up the channels in the same way, so potentially clockwise or anti-clockwise. By that I mean you want to have that your first camera is at the first point of interest, and then the next camera is right clockwise to that camera, and that's connected to channel 2, and so on and so forth. And what that does is it just makes it easier to set up and easier to keep track of things rather than having all the channels jumbled up. Okay, so looking at the installation, the first thing I wanted to show you is how I have drilled holes in the junction boxes. So these are junction boxes that are externally rated. I pre-drilled a hole in them so that we could run the cable through easily, and then in the location where the camera was installed, I also drilled a hole in the soffit. Now the camera was mounted onto the top part of the junction box, and that was with 3 screws. Now here I've used zinc plated screws, but you want to use galvanized or steel screws so that they don't rust out. Okay, now here what you can see is an example of how I've run one of the cables. It may not be the case that you can access all the roof's area, and if that is the case, then you may have to take off a roof sheet or do something a little bit extra so that you can get the cable to the place that you need to run it to. This was not so bad as it looks because the roof sheets were actually screwed on as opposed to being nailed on. If they're nailed on, yes, it can be a little bit more difficult. So basically you can't really see in there, but somebody is inside there and letting me know if the cable is coming out at the right place. Once I had finished, I actually recovered that roof sheet, but I made sure to put some more building paper just to maintain the integrity of the roof. Here's another example of how you can run the cable. This first example, you can see that I tried to run the cable, but it actually, when pulled, released and the cable fell out. And this will happen, and so you just have to try once or twice and you'll get the hang of it. Basically, you want to feed the cable into the soffit with the wire attached, which is what I'm showing here, and then just feed the cable slowly until you get that red power part component and the BNC cable through. And then if you have somebody on the other side, they can pull it when you tell them to. Otherwise, you can go into the roof and you can just pull it yourself. Now here, this is where all the cables have run to once they have been installed with the junction boxes. So this is the installed site for the actual DVR, and the power point down there was changed for the sake of there being so many supplies required with this DVR. Now this is the fiber optic connection. This is where the network connection has to run to from the DVR. So a cable has been run from there to this location here from underneath the house. Now the next thing you want to notice here is that once the roof ceiling has been put on, a brush plate has been installed so that it just looks a lot neater. This just makes the overall installation nicer and stops there being a big wall in the ceiling or the wall. Now what you can see is that the DVR has been installed and there has been a trunking installed so that the cables run neatly. The internet connection has been run here, and you can see the cable running from the fiber optic to the modem to the DVR. And it's been done in such a way that the modem can actually now be shifted to this location here, in the cupboard. Now you can see that the screen mount has already been installed with the HDMI cable sticking out, and that's running back to the DVR. And now underneath you'll finally see the network connection. There was a minor mistake, but that can be easily repaired. Now what you can see is the actual install of the cameras outside, and they look fairly neat. They are sitting on top of the junction box, as was mentioned a little earlier on in the video, and you can see that it has a little bit more of a cleaner profile. This is the one in the front door. This one is again quite neat. When the light turns on, it will actually show in color. So if you were to leave your light on in the night, of the front door light on, the camera would continue to record in color. This camera is for the back door, and this camera was the one where you saw the wire being fed with the roof being opened. This again is the back of the house. The back of the house is still in need of repair, but the camera has been installed and it can easily be removed when the time comes for renovation. And this is the one facing the carport. So that was my review and unboxing on the Swann Smart Security System, the 4K series. I really do hope you got something out of it, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below and I will definitely get back to you. Also, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if you want to see more of this type of content, feel free to subscribe. Once again, thanks for watching the video.